I'm here today to discuss with my good friend Steve Ensley issues that we've been talking about for really a long time, Steve. Issues surrounding privacy and security in regards to the internet and social media, really. So anyway, Steve, share some thoughts as we begin.
Sure. I've been in the technology business for 42 years and been specifically dealing with the internet since the early 90s when Windows first came out and the internet started to take off because of the ability to pass images, graphics. And because I've been involved with it on a daily basis every day, I've seen trends, I've seen the wonderful work that it does, but I've also seen the dark side of the internet. And especially the last few years, since 2008, I've been noticing some things beyond the scope of just vulgarity, extreme violence, and pornography. Those are all bad enough. I mean, just that. But the internet has moved into the realm of invasion of privacy. It's gotten extremely risky in terms of private information, secure information, financial information. The internet, in its effort, and the internet users, I should say, not the internet itself, but the internet users, big organizations like Google and Yahoo and Microsoft and countries like Russia and China have discovered that it's a very fertile ground to ply their trades to generate revenues, to spy on people, to sell information, to sell marketing information. Some of it is benign marketing, but some of it is very intrusive and very invasive into a person's home. And then add to that the outright stalking and the scams that are going on, the financial scams, especially for older people. You add to that, all of that, to the pornography and the vulgarity and the destruction of our social structure, our social values. There's really, that dark side has really expanded significantly in the internet.
Steve, now some people, even as they hear this, they're thinking, well, is this just a little bit over the top? You know, they may be really very naive yet in relationship to security and privacy issues. I know that you can give multiple evidences or examples, even from personal telephone calls that you've received and whatever. But anyway, just break through that a little bit more, if you would.
Well, there is a naivety. There's also almost a sense of, what can I do about it anyway? And the internet itself, although the concept seems simple, what works underneath, what makes it work, is very complex, very difficult to understand, and with multiple choices of browsers and multiple choices of email software and social sites and all the complexity, a lot of people are just confused by it and really are intimidated by it and have no will to tackle it. Smartphones, right now, smartphones and tablets are outselling PC devices. Well, last I heard was more than 50 to 1. So you look at a smartphone and it's a full computer in your pocket is what it is, but it's not intuitive. You have to really work with it to understand how it works and what it's doing, and even then, a lot of what it does is hidden, specifically the GPS location tracking technology that's in smartphones, where you can use it to display a very handy map when you're traveling down the road or walking around sidewalks. But that has also been abused in the sense that it's two-way information, that information can be sent back to another family member. It can be sent back to some of these services that provide it, like Apple and like Google. And it is sent back to that, and people are unaware that every moment every activity they're participating in is able to be recorded. And even to the point now where some government agencies are asking the manufacturers and the providers to allow them direct access to the microphones and the cameras on their phones so that they can spy on quote-unquote terrorist activity. Well, it's not discriminatory. They can turn that on for anyone, and we've already seen cases of abuse where spying, gathering information, selling that information illegally has been done on the internet by companies looking to improve their marketing situation or to sell the data to federal organizations, sell it to people that want that information, but they want it for immoral or illegal purposes.
Steve, I think one of the clear-cut evidences of the power of social media in relationship to the internet is even an example that somebody from our own office was talking about the other day. We were looking for the possibilities of purchasing a 12-foot stepladder, for example, here. And so one of our staff did a search on this, and lo and behold, for the next hours and even days ahead, whenever she was doing a search of any kind, what should show up but stepladders?
Yeah, on every page. And that's just a perfect example of the kind of thing that they are capturing. When you go to an online purchasing site like eBay or Amazon, all that data is immediately going to Google. And Google is using that so that through your browser, when you go to any other website, and in that case, if she had gone to Amazon and then within seconds gone to Facebook, she would have found Facebook ladder ads all over the Facebook page, or Yahoo Mail, or YouTube, or any of those places. And there'd be ladders there for days afterwards, sometimes weeks, if no other shopping has been done. And it's just further proof of the capability they have. It isn't that tracking ladder activity is the evil part. It's the fact that the capability is there to track anything and everything. Mm-hmm. And that is not only a secure or an extreme invasion of privacy, but it's a security issue, because what if you're doing your banking? If somebody can get information to what bank you deal with, and then through other sources get a hold of your name and your account number or your social security number, pretty soon your entire financial stability is at risk. And that happens every day. It's not an isolated thing. There are whole companies, especially offshores, that their whole business is to try to crack financial institutions and get financial information, retail institutions, credit cards. Recently, J.P. Morgan was breached for 78 million accounts. Target has been breached. Even the CIA and the FBI have been breached by professional hackers that are looking for personal information that they can use to either steal and generate revenue or sell to someone else.
And that is terribly concerning, and on the financial standpoint. But another concern that I know that in our discussions you have named in our discussions has been, the whole matter of that sometimes people think, well, sure, I can see that as a problem, but if you're minding your own business and not causing anybody any trouble, why do you have to be so concerned about this privacy and this protection? And there is a reason for being concerned.
There is. The primary reason for us to be concerned, and I've been told, why do you worry about it if you're not doing anything immoral or illegal? The problem is, we don't define, as Christians, we don't define what's immoral anymore. The government does. And if the government decides that to send an email regarding homosexual behavior from a pastor to his flock or from me to you, if they decide that's a hate crime in the future, we instantly become criminals in the eyes of the law. Not in God's eyes, but in the eyes of the law. We become the criminals. We don't control what's called or defined as criminal activity anymore. That's not done. And not only can they monitor you from that point on for potential criminal activity from their perspective, But they can go back into their archives and they say, look, Bill Johnson wrote about homosexuality back in 2009, so he's guilty of a hate crime. And that's the problem with that, with our refusing to be involved and refusing to be aware of what's going on. We're setting ourselves up for future extreme difficulties within our families, within our lives. It's just a very dangerous game we're playing because we don't understand, or we're not willing to take the time to do something about it. And I don't mean that in a. I'm not trying to condemn the church for that at all. It's not just the church that's missed it, but we know about it now, and we need to be good stewards of the resources God has given us, and we need to make sure that those resources are used to further His kingdom, and not line the pockets of some immoral politician or some Russian company. We just have an obligation of stewardship there that's involved.
And certainly, most persons that are listening to this will recognize the great shift that's taken place, even in our courts within the last year, where traditional marriage or biblical marriage has been the standard since the beginning of man, and yet here has been this switch by way of the Supreme Court, and with it, corporate America is following immediately thereafter. And so there is a great vulnerability that we have in relationship to just simply standing on basic principles or basic promises of the Scripture.
Yeah.
And we're in harm's way.
And you and I, as fathers and grandfathers, we have an obligation, a responsibility to protect our children and our grandchildren. If we know there's a danger, we have a responsibility to protect them from that. For example, you don't let your child play out in the street when you know there's traffic there. You just, as a father, you know that's dangerous, and you keep them out of that street. Well, the internet's the same situation. If you know there's an activity that's risky for them, as a father, as a grandfather, as the head of our families, we have a responsibility to know what they're doing in the first place and help them understand why it's dangerous, and then make sure they're not involved in that activity or behavior. And the social sites are very, very fertile trolling grounds for sexual predators. They're very fertile grounds for scam artists that are looking to trick people into buying things or investing in things. They're very fertile grounds for that in these social sites. So if we don't make our families and our friends, if we don't take a leadership role and make them aware of those dangers, that falls on us as fathers.
Steve, in relationship to Facebook, for example, I've had some discussions with you recently, and there's been a numbers of times where I've put pictures of my grandchildren, my children, my grandkids on Facebook. And I now have moved away from that. I do that with great sadness and sorrow, but sure. I just simply, I've come to the point of recognizing that, though that's probably perhaps a long shot, that someone would target them, but I've now come to the point where I'm just believing that's up to my own children what they want to post and not post. I don't want to be held I just don't want to be one that causes any problems or puts them in any kind of a vulnerable position. Sure. Is that overreach, do you think?
No, not at all. Recently I attended a conference on sexual slavery. And there are literally millions of children in this country that are caught up in that sex slavery. And
you're saying millions?
Millions. According to the conference leaders, it was in the millions. And that ranges anywhere from a child being tracked through their phone to the mall and just molested, all the way to actually kidnapping and selling the child into slavery or women. And it's happening according to this conference and what I believe are very credible law enforcement speakers who keep the records. It's in the millions that happen every year. So it's not rare. It's not rare at all. I wish it was, but and most of that is done through the internet and through these social sites, YouTube, Facebook, Daily Motion, any of those that are free for people to put anything up that they'd like to publish. You know, and it's a shame because the social sites do have a good side. It's a wonderful way to communicate information with family, share information with families, and share our lives, even though we're separated. Sometimes it's wonderful, but it's also risky. So if we don't open our minds and say, you know, there is a risk here, it's the same thing as sending our child out to play on the street. Exactly the same thing.
Steve, as a person that has been involved in so-called Christian activism for a number of years now, and in the recent years, oftentimes posting on the American Decency Facebook, articles or kind of heads-up thing, or some of the accounts of what's unfolding day by day in terms of Islamism and some of these other concerns. I've come to the point of recognizing the fact that as I'm doing that, on the one hand I'm warning, but and I'm glad to do that and desire to do that, but on the other hand, there's also a sense that even if I wanted to scrub that information off and say, well, I'm going to just kind of change directions here a little bit, even for a little while, there is no scrubbing that stuff off. Ultimately, it may not appear on there, but but it is in the record.
Once it's on the internet, it's always there. Always. There's just no way. And proof of that is just ask a celebrity that's had their pictures posted that they didn't want posted, and they spend millions of dollars trying to get that wiped off the internet and never succeed. No one has ever succeeded at that. It's because by its nature the internet is so diverse that there isn't just one location to store things. It's not like there's one big computer somewhere. It's millions and millions and billions of computers that are sharing information with each other constantly. So unless you have control of those billions of computers, there's no way to remove that information ever. It's always up there. It's permanent.
And in recent days, there's been an account that has come by way of a warning to military.
Yes.
And the account or the warning has come because there is the recognition that ISIS is targeting soldiers that have come home back to America once again.
Yes.
So the warning that has come, I think, even from the Pentagon itself is be very careful about what you're posting, and even encouraging military that have come home to get off the Facebook.
To get off from Facebook, yes. They've gone so far to recommend that you just get off from Facebook altogether because of the serious and severe threat of homegrown terrorists actually tracking these individuals down and doing harm to them or their families. It's and as slow as the government is to move sometimes, it has to be pretty serious. It has to be pretty serious that they've made that recommendation already. And unfortunately, it isn't just terrorists that use the internet or use the social sites for that. It's sexual predators, it's scammers, it's people that are just looking to benefit at your expense.
It does really leave quite a paper trail too, doesn't it? I mean, from the standpoint of whether it's the law enforcement or the military or whatever, they can do quite a track on a background of a person.
Yes, yeah.
And it's all right there, isn't it? Even if they have to go in the underbelly, but it's there somewhere.
Yeah, it is, right up to and including where you were standing at the moment you did it. If you have any location services turned on, they know exactly where you are and what you did.
Steve and I, we've been talking about some pretty heavy-duty stuff here.
Yeah,
but at the same time, I want to also talk about some of the things of what people can do to protect themselves and their family.
Yeah, there's no such thing as 100% secure, but there are a lot of things you can do to help to reduce the risk, to make it less likely that someone will come after you. I recommend, especially when it comes to financial or family transactions, don't put things on the internet that you don't want anyone else to know about. Don't buy things on the internet with your regular credit card or debit card. Have a separate card with a very small balance on it to make those purchases. When you join a social site or exchange site of data or pictures or information, put the absolute minimum information on there. Don't even put your birth date if you don't have to be on it. Just name, and I have even recommended that they use names that they aren't necessarily legal names, maiden names or nicknames or something like that, so that it can't be that activity can't be traced directly back to you as an individual. There's no law against you using a nickname or a maiden name when you sign up for any kind of online activity, unless you're trying to make some sort of a legal transaction. But just frankly, stay off the social sites. I mean, I know they're good for things, but email works too, and so does the telephone if you want to call people. Just don't post things on social sites, especially things about your children. If you take a picture of your children and they're standing in front of their school, or they're standing in front of a landmark within the range of where you live, they're standing in front of Harry's drugstore. Well, it's pretty easy for a sexual predator to figure out Harry's drugstore is in this town, and your child's last name is this, and you've seen this is the first name from the school records, so you hack into the school records, or you find them online public, you track down your child, you know what school they go to when they get out of school, and who's there with them to pick them up or not pick them up. And it's just there's so much information available to people of ill intent that it's just risky. So any one of those items that you take out of that activity helps reduce the risk. So don't take pictures of your child in front of a landmark. Don't put their names on there. Just be careful.
I know another thing that you have spoken to, I've heard you talk to others about is that you have found that there are people, again, in their well-meaning, but in their naivete, that they're going on a vacation or they're on a vacation. Speak to that, if you would, please.
Well, it's my own brother is on a trip right now to a foreign country, and he's posting back pictures several times a day. Hey, I'm here on this island, or I'm doing this, and we're having a great time. And that's all wonderful, except what he's done is painted a big red target on his home to any of the people in the local area that know him, know his home, and know that he's not home. They can easily drive by and see if there's anybody else there, and he could come home and find all of his electronics missing, by doing that, because he's posted on his Facebook page that he's away from home. And it's just, I know people like to do that, they like to share with family, but do that after you get back. Don't do that while you're gone, because all you've done is painted a target on your home.
I recall just several weeks ago now an article that I read in relationship to Yahoo, that Yahoo had desired to protect the privacy of those that used Yahoo.
Yes.
And there were many. And so at any rate, they, as opposed to like Google and others who basically weren't concerned about protecting their privacy and were willing to sell their data, Yahoo was holding back from that. And explain what happened there.
Yeah, Yahoo for years has had some pretty strong privacy policies, and they have realized the risk, to their subscribers, and tried to keep identities protected. But they were, in fact, sued or threatened to be sued by the NSA for information that they wanted potentially to track some terrorist activity. And Yahoo resisted. They said, no, we can't, we don't know if they're terrorists. We don't, if you can go through the right legal procedure and provide warrants on individuals that we, can legally then turn the data over to you, but just random searches without warrants is illegal. And they were threatened with a $250,000 a day fine, which I just learned today when I was researching it, was going to be doubled after 2 weeks, and then doubled again after 2 weeks for that, for every day they failed to comply. So Yahoo was looking at, after a month, and how often can you get any court activity in less than a month? After a month, they were $1 million a day selling or fined for not providing this information to the NSA that wasn't specific. They just wanted them to turn it all over. Well, that's the innocent and the guilty.
I know when I read that article, Steve, it was like if I had any doubt up to that point as to the intentionality of the Fed, you know, to get that data, that altered my view in relationship to it.
And that happened back in 2008, the actual threat. So,
really?
Yeah.
And now I know too that as we have discussed, Google is a highly profitable corporation, but the vast majority of its monies, I understand, doesn't come from the general public, but comes from the federal government. Is that correct?
Well, I can't prove it. They are an ad-based organization where they sell ads, but I do know, based on the revenues they're generating, the public revenues, because they're a public company, and my background in what ad marketing is worth, there's no way they can be generating that kind of revenue from just ads alone. So they have to be selling this data that they're collecting. And I personally believe, their biggest customer for that data is the government. I don't see them getting that kind of revenue any other way. It has to be coming from the government. So that's my personal opinion, and someday I think we'll see official proof of that.
Well, I know from your years having engaged yourself personally and in the business world, when you were in the business world, and far beyond that, you have watched the different companies and corporations, and Google really has stood out and does stand out to you as a corporation that I know you personally avoid, and you have convinced me to as well. Give me even further some of the reasons why that is, Steve.
Well, there's no question about it. Google has great technology. No question about it. Can't be argued. But most people don't realize how new that organization is. They technically started in 2004. They became a company in 2002, but actually began business in 2004. And since then have become the largest internet company in the world, worth billions and billions of dollars, and the stock price is way over $1,000 a share. And they did this because they became experts at collecting data and providing services that collect data, and providing ad and marketing services to potential advertisers that said, we can target your ad message, and we can make your ad dollars go further because we can target that. And that's what they started doing, and then they started adding all the peripheral services, the cloud services, the stores, the smartphones, the Android operating system. I mean, they are literally touching everything. They're even embarking onto space travel now. They've gotten so big. But they have absolutely, in my mind, no moral foundation. Whatever makes a buck is fair game. Yeah. And so they have no compunction against selling your information that they have collected on you to anyone that wants to pay the price. There's nothing that stops them morally from doing that.
There's much that's to be concerned about there.
Right.
Steve, as we move towards closing, and I'm sure this is going to generate some further thought in the minds of some that are paying attention to this. And what would be the best best to contact you if anyone has further questions?
Well, I am currently the CEO of American Family Online. We have a website, afo.net. It's easy enough to go onto that website. We have a contact form. They can send me a message, and I do read every message directed to me. So, and I'd be happy to answer questions or provide further information to the best of my ability to folks that have questions about it. But just go online to afo.net, and you'll be able to contact me.
Steve, now as we close, one of the significant aspects of AFO and of how God has led you is the fact that you have a Christian world life view, and so what you do and the focus that you have and the intensity you have, because clearly you have been burdened with this concern for many, many years. If you would just close us with either some scripture or some biblical principles that has driven your pursuit and your concern for protecting the peoples of this world, and particularly Christians, for many years.
Well, we touched on the stewardship, but there's also the issue of holiness, and Philippians 6:8 is one of our verses, where we should set no unholy thing before our eyes. We really have a responsibility to pursue personal holiness. And so a lot of my work, most of my work up until the last few years, was in the area of personal purity and holiness. We provide several different filtering technologies to help protect individuals and families from pornography, from extreme violence, from vulgarity. We've been doing that for 16 years. But it has gone beyond that. A very significant line has been crossed, which goes past just protecting yourself from protecting your holiness, gone into protecting your very own life. It's getting to that point. It's that serious. So it's not rocket science for any of us that are serious about our Christian values. If we just take a few moments to think about what's going on the internet and what it's doing to our lives, it's almost impossible to miss that there's some serious issues, and that we really need to be very aware, very careful, and very active in defending ourselves and our families.
Steve Ensley, I just once again would just thank you for your commitment, and may God continue to bless your ministry.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending this time with us.
And I'd like to close with the fact that I get to work with a number of different ministries that are out on the front lines. That's where I get most of this information from. Ministries like your own, the American Decency Association, and many others. And it's my honor to help serve and support ministries like that, because you folks really are the ones taking the arrows. And to the best of my ability with my company and my technology, we want to help ministries like yours.
And that's what I've seen in you all these years. Thanks very much, Steve Ensley.
Thank you.